He wasn't supposed to survive. The words hung heavy in the cold air as Sergeant Ethan Carter lay motionless in the heart of the dense woods. His body, battered and broken, was no longer capable of holding on to life. The storm raged on above him, lightning cracking through the sky, illuminating the world in sharp bursts, and the rain fell relentlessly, drenching everything in its path. He was alone, abandoned, left for dead in a place where no one would hear his cries. Ethan's vision blurred, and the weight of the world seemed to crush down on him. His breaths were shallow, every inhale a battle. His thoughts drifted to his past, to the brotherhood he once shared with his fellow Marines, to the bonds he thought would last forever. But those bonds had been severed, and now, in the silence of the woods, he was nothing but a forgotten man. Just as his mind began to fade into darkness, a rustling sound interrupted the stillness. His tired eyes flickered open, barely able to focus. Through the curtain of rain, he saw a figure, a shape moving toward him, seemingly out of nowhere. It was a dog, a German shepherd, sleek and strong, its amber eyes locked onto Ethan's with a piercing intensity. The dog was drenched, its fur matted and heavy with the weight of the storm, but its gaze was unwavering, full of determination. The dog's name was Rex, and Rex had been through his own battles. A once proud canine partner, now abandoned in a world that no longer understood his worth. But Rex had not forgotten. He had not abandoned his Marine. As Rex neared, Ethan could feel a flicker of hope, a spark deep within his chest. The dog was alive, and somehow, that meant there was still a chance for him too. Rex stood over Ethan, not barking or growling, but silently urging him to move. The dog nudged him gently, its cold nose pressing against his hand, as if trying to communicate in a way words never could. Rex's presence was a lifeline, an anchor in a sea of despair. Ethan's fingers twitched, responding to the dog's touch, a sign that, despite everything, he wasn't ready to give up. With a mighty push, Rex nudged Ethan's body further, attempting to lift him. His movements were precise, as though he had been trained for this moment, trained to save, to rescue, to defy the odds. But the rain came down harder, and Ethan's body grew heavier. His muscles, once strong from years of training, now felt like lead. He couldn't help but wonder if it was too late. Was this it? Was the storm going to take him, as it had taken so many before him? Just when the thought settled in his mind, a low growl rumbled from Rex's throat. The dog was not giving up. It was a sound of determination, of loyalty that transcended any earthly challenge. Ethan's breath came quicker, each inhalation a victory, each exhalation a whisper of strength. Rex wasn't just a dog. He was a promise that Ethan would not face death alone. The dog gave one last push, and Ethan's body finally stirred. His fingers clenched into Rex's fur as he tried to sit up. It wasn't much, but it was enough. The light from the storm flickered again, this time in the distance, like a beacon of hope in the middle of the chaos. Rex stood proudly, never leaving his side, guiding him, pushing him forward through the storm. Ethan's heart beat stronger now, not just for himself, but for the dog that had saved him. They were in this together, and together, they would make it out of the woods. As the rain continued to pour, Ethan could feel the warmth of Rex's body pressed against his side, a reminder that he was not alone. His body was cold, his limbs heavy, but Rex's presence made him fight to stay awake. The dog nudged him again, its eyes never leaving him, as if to say, "You're not giving up." Ethan's breath was shallow, but his mind was clearing, slowly, like a fog lifting. The storm raged around them, but the only sound that mattered was Rex's steady breathing and the soft crunch of his paws on the wet ground. Ethan had no idea how much time had passed, but when he looked up, he saw that the storm was beginning to die down. The dark clouds above them started to part, allowing glimpses of the dim moonlight. Rex gave a low whine and tugged at Ethan's jacket sleeve, pulling him forward. Ethan tried to stand, but his legs were unsteady, and for a moment, he thought he might fall. Rex didn't give up. He was there, steady and strong, ready to help. The dog circled behind Ethan, its powerful body pushing against his back to help him stand. With Rex's guidance, Ethan found his footing, leaning heavily on the dog as they moved through the woods. The path ahead was still treacherous, the ground slick and uneven, But the dog moved with purpose, never wavering. Ethan's heart began to beat stronger. The world around him seemed less threatening now, the storm nothing more than a distant memory. His vision was clearer, his mind sharper, and for the first time since he had collapsed, he felt like he could keep going. "Thank you," he whispered, barely able to speak, but Rex seemed to hear him. The dog's pace never slowed, its eyes always on the trail ahead, its body strong and unrelenting. As they continued through the woods, Ethan's strength grew little by little. The rain had stopped, and the air was thick with the scent of wet earth and pine. He could feel the ground beneath him, solid and real, and with each step, he knew he was getting closer to safety. But then, out of nowhere, there was a noise, a rustling sound in the bushes. Rex stopped immediately, his ears pricked, his body tense. Ethan froze, his hand instinctively reaching for Rex's fur. The dog didn't growl or bark, but he stood still, alert, waiting for something to happen. A moment passed, and then a shadow emerged from the trees. Ethan's heart raced, but Rex didn't move. He simply stood there, calm and collected, as if he had seen this before. From the shadows, a figure appeared, another Marine, a search and rescue soldier, holding a flashlight in one hand and a radio in the other. "Hey, over here," the soldier called, his voice a welcome sound in the still night. Ethan's legs wobbled as he took a step forward, his eyes meeting the soldier's. "I thought I'd lost you out here," the soldier said with a grin, coming forward to help. Ethan managed a small smile, but his gaze shifted to Rex, who had not moved an inch, still standing guard by his side. The soldier followed Ethan's gaze and nodded. "Looks like you found yourself a good friend," he said. Ethan's hand rested gently on Rex's back, and for a moment, he didn't need to say anything. The dog had done more than just guide him out of the woods. He had saved him. Rex's loyalty, strength, and determination had brought him back from the edge, and together, they had made it through the storm. They had made it to safety. The morning sun had finally broken through the clouds, casting a warm golden light over the trees. Ethan squinted up at the sky, his face a mix of relief and exhaustion. The ground beneath him felt solid now. Each step he took more confident than the last. Rex walked beside him, his steady presence a reminder of how far they had come. The journey had been long and grueling, but it wasn't over yet. The soldier's body still ached from the earlier ordeal, and though he was far from fully recovered, there was a sense of calm that had settled over him. It wasn't just the end of the storm, it was the promise of a new beginning. As they moved forward, Ethan's eyes scanned the path ahead. The trees were thinning, and through the gaps, he could see the distant outline of the rescue team's vehicle. His heart lifted at the sight, but there was something else, a quiet understanding between him and Rex. The dog had been his lifeline, but there was more to it than that. Rex wasn't just a companion. He had been a guardian, a protector in the truest sense. Without the dog's unyielding loyalty, Ethan wasn't sure he would have made it this far. He reached down and ran his fingers through Rex's wet fur, feeling the dog's warmth against his hand. "We're almost there, buddy," Ethan murmured, the words barely audible, but Rex seemed to understand. The dog looked up at him with those amber eyes, as if acknowledging the bond they had formed in the wilderness. No words were needed. As they approached the clearing, the distant hum of the rescue team's vehicles grew louder, and Ethan felt the weight of his journey lifting. The warmth of the sun was becoming more pronounced, but it wasn't just the weather that felt brighter. It was the sense of hope, the realization that he had not been abandoned in his darkest hour. The rescue team greeted them with relief and smiles, but Ethan's gaze was on Rex. The dog had stayed by his side through every step, through every moment of uncertainty, and now, standing in the light of day, it was clear to him, Rex had saved his life. The team offered a few words of praise, but all Ethan could do was nod and smile. He wasn't sure how to thank the dog for what he had done. "You did it, Rex," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. Rex responded with a low, contented growl and nuzzled Ethan's hand. They were a team, and this moment, this small victory, was theirs to share. The world felt different now, as if the storm had washed away the past, leaving behind something pure. Ethan knew that this was just the beginning of his healing, but with Rex by his side, he felt ready to face whatever came next. The team led them back to the vehicle, where they would begin the journey back to base, but for Ethan, the real journey had already begun. He had survived, not by chance, but because of the unwavering loyalty of a dog who refused to leave him behind. Together, they had faced the storm, and together, they had found their way home. The ride back to the base was quiet, the only sound being the occasional hum of the engine and the soft panting of Rex as he sat beside Ethan. The light outside was changing, the day turning into a soft orange as the sun began its descent. Ethan sat in the back of the rescue vehicle, his body still sore, but his spirit lifted. Rex had not left his side, sitting loyally next to him, offering silent comfort. It was in moments like these that Ethan felt the weight of everything he had gone through. The storm, the pain, the fear, everything felt distant now, as if a chapter had closed and a new one was beginning. The other members of the rescue team were talking among themselves, but Ethan remained in his own thoughts. He thought about the bond he shared with Rex, a bond that had been forged in the darkest of times. The dog had saved his life, not because he was trained to do so, but because he refused to leave him behind. It wasn't just loyalty. It was a kind of unspoken understanding, a bond between two beings who had both seen the harshness of the world and still managed to trust. The vehicle made its way through the winding roads, and the familiar side of the base's entrance came into view. Ethan's heart swelled with emotion as the gate opened, and they drove through. The base was a place of refuge for many, a place where soldiers came and went, where memories were made and sometimes left behind. But now, for Ethan, it felt like a homecoming, a place where he could heal, not just physically, but emotionally. As they parked near the barracks, the team began to unload, and the leader of the rescue team came over to Ethan. "You did good, Sergeant," he said with a nod. "We weren't sure if you were going to make it, but you pulled through." Ethan nodded, but his eyes were on Rex, who was already jumping out of the vehicle and wagging his tail. The dog had been by his side the entire time, and now, in the safety of the base, he was finally able to relax. Ethan slowly got out of the vehicle, his legs still unsteady, but the pain had faded into something manageable. He took a deep breath, feeling the air fill his lungs with a fresh sense of freedom. The journey through the woods felt like a lifetime ago, and yet, it had only been a few days. The emotional toll of the experience would take time to process, but for now, Ethan knew he was safe. He turned to Rex, who was sitting at attention, waiting for his next command. With a smile, Ethan knelt down and ruffled the dog's fur. "You're a real hero, you know that?" he said quietly. Rex let out a soft bark and licked his hand, as if to say, "I'm just doing my job." Ethan stood up and looked around the base. There was still a lot to be done, but for now, he could rest. The bond he shared with Rex was unbreakable, and it was a reminder that, no matter how dark things got, there was always a way through. Sometimes, you just needed a little help from a loyal friend. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Ethan felt a deep sense of gratitude wash over him. He had made it out of the woods, and with Rex by his side, he knew that no matter what the future held, he would never be alone. The days following Ethan's return to the base were filled with a quiet kind of routine. He spent most of his time resting, allowing his body to heal from the exhaustion of the storm and the toll it had taken on him. But his mind was always busy, replaying the events of the past few days. Each time he thought about the forest, about the moment when Rex had found him, it felt like a miracle. The bond between them had become something more than just man and dog. It was a connection built on trust, survival, and an unspoken understanding that neither of them had expected. As the days passed, the memories of the storm began to fade, replaced by a sense of peace that Ethan hadn't known in years. He began to take small walks around the base, his legs still a little stiff, but stronger each day. Rex never left his side, always a step behind, always alert, as if guarding Ethan against the world. Ethan had never been one for words, but he knew that Rex understood everything without a single command. It was in the way the dog watched him, the way he stayed close, as if nothing could tear them apart. The connection they shared was something that couldn't be explained, but it was real. One afternoon, as they walked through the woods near the base, Ethan stopped and looked around. The trees were tall and strong, their branches swaying gently in the breeze. It was a peaceful place, and for the first time in a long time, Ethan felt truly at peace. Rex sat beside him, his head tilted slightly, as if sensing the change in the air. Ethan smiled, and reached down to scratch the dog's ears. "You know, I don't think I've ever been this thankful for a dog," he said quietly. Rex didn't bark or wag his tail. He simply leaned into Ethan's touch, a silent acknowledgement of their shared journey. It was a simple moment, but it was everything. Later that evening, as they sat in the mess hall, Ethan's fellow Marines approached him. They had all heard the story of his survival, the story of how Rex had saved his life. Some of them had heard about it from the rescue team, while others had heard through the grapevine. Ethan wasn't one to share much about his personal life, but as the group gathered around, he found himself telling them about Rex, about the bond they had shared in the woods. As he spoke, he could feel the weight of his words, the emotion behind them. The Marines listened intently, their expressions serious but understanding. "Sounds like that dog's got your back," one of them said. Ethan nodded, more than anyone else ever could. It was a moment of connection, of camaraderie that he hadn't realized he had been missing. The Marines had always been his family, but now, with Rex by his side, it felt like he had something more, a partnership that transcended anything he had ever known. That night, as Ethan and Rex lay in the barracks, the sounds of the base faded away, and for the first time in a long time, Ethan felt like he could truly sleep. He wasn't alone. Rex was there, and for now, that was enough. The storm had passed, and the future, whatever it held, seemed a little brighter. As the weeks passed, Ethan began to find a rhythm again. His body had healed from the worst of the storm, and his mind was finally starting to settle. But the bond between him and Rex had grown even stronger. The dog, ever watchful, seemed to know exactly what Ethan needed without him having to ask. Whether it was sitting beside him during quiet moments, or nudging him gently to get outside and walk, Rex was there. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about living again, about finding peace in a world that had once been full of chaos. Every day, as Ethan continued his work at the base, he noticed something different. The other Marines were starting to look at him differently too. There was a quiet respect in their eyes, as if they could see the change in him. His strength wasn't just in his body. It was in his spirit, something that had been broken but was slowly mending, thanks to the unspoken connection he shared with Rex. One afternoon, as they were walking through the base together, a group of Marines approached. They were the same ones who had gathered around him when he first returned, eager to hear the story of how he had made it out of the woods. This time, however, their interest was different. It wasn't just about the survival story, it was about the dog. "You know, I've heard a lot of stories about K9S, one of them said. But what you and Rex have is something else. It's like you two are connected in a way that's hard to explain." Ethan smiled, glancing down at Rex, who was standing beside him, looking up at him with those ever-watchful eyes. "Yeah, it's hard to explain. But there's something about him. He's not just a dog. He's more than that." Rex wagged his tail at the sound of his name, as if understanding the praise. The Marines nodded, and there was a moment of quiet recognition between them all. "It's good to see you back, Sergeant," another Marine said. Ethan nodded, his heart full. It's good to be back. As the days turned into weeks, Ethan continued to grow stronger, both physically and emotionally. The pain from the past, from the storms of life, was still there, but it didn't hold the same power over him anymore. He had Rex by his side, and with that, he felt like he could face whatever came next. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, casting a warm glow across the base, Ethan sat outside, looking out at the horizon. Rex lay beside him, his head resting on Ethan's foot, as if to say, "I'm here. We've made it through." And in that moment, Ethan knew he wasn't just surviving anymore. He was living, with purpose, with strength, and with the loyalty of a dog who had never given up on him. As the stars began to twinkle in the sky, Ethan allowed himself to feel a sense of peace. There was still work to be done, still challenges ahead, but for the first time in a long while, he felt like he could take it all on, because he had Rex, his partner, his friend, by his side. As the weeks turned into months, Ethan found himself adjusting to a new life, one that he hadn't imagined was possible when he had first set foot on the base. Each day, he grew stronger, more resilient, and, surprisingly, more at peace. His recovery wasn't just physical, it was emotional too. The nightmares that once plagued him, the memories of the storm, of being alone in the woods, started to fade into the background. replaced by the quiet comfort of routine and the unwavering loyalty of Rex. The bond between them had become something unbreakable. Rex was always there, whether they were out for a walk or simply sitting together in the barracks, as if the dog understood that sometimes silence spoke louder than words. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about finding balance, about living in the present and moving forward. One morning, as the sun rose over the base, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Ethan found himself reflecting on everything he had been through. He stood by the window, looking out at the landscape, the calmness of it all. He had come so far since the days in the woods, and now, standing there, he realized just how much he had to be grateful for. The storm had shown him his strength, but it was Rex who had shown him what it meant to trust again. That trust was not just in the dog, it was in himself too. He had learned to rely on his instincts, to push through the darkest moments, and to come out the other side stronger. Ethan turned to look at Rex, who was resting peacefully on his bed, his eyes half closed in contentment. The dog had become more than just a companion. He had become a symbol of everything Ethan had fought for, everything he had worked to reclaim. The bond they shared was unlike anything Ethan had ever known. As much as he had saved Rex, Rex had saved him in return. Later that afternoon, Ethan was called into a meeting with the commanding officer. The officer greeted him with a firm handshake, his expression serious but kind. "Sergeant Carter," he began, "we've been keeping an eye on your progress. You've come a long way." Ethan nodded, not sure where the conversation was headed. "We're recommending you for a new assignment," the officer continued. "One that will require your skills, your experience, and your loyalty. You've earned it." Ethan listened intently, his mind racing. A new assignment? He had spent so long recovering, so long learning to live again, that the idea of taking on something new felt both exciting and overwhelming. What exactly would the assignment entail? Ethan asked, his voice steady but curious. "You'd be working with a special team," the officer replied. "We need someone who understands both the challenges and the rewards of the job, someone who can lead with strength and compassion. We think you're that person." Ethan's heart began to race. The idea of taking on a new challenge, of being part of something bigger, was exactly what he needed. He glanced at Rex, who was now standing by his side, his tail wagging gently. "I'm ready," Ethan said, his voice filled with determination. "I'll take it." The officer smiled, nodding in approval. "I knew you would. You've come a long way, Sergeant. I'm proud of you." As the meeting ended, Ethan felt a renewed sense of purpose. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he had a clear path ahead of him. He had no idea what challenges lay in store, but he knew that with Rex by his side, he was ready to face anything. The future was uncertain, but Ethan had come to understand that it was not the unknown that mattered. It was the journey, the people you met along the way, and the trust you built with those who walked beside you. And as long as Rex was there, he knew he wasn't walking alone. Weeks passed, and Ethan's life began to take shape in a way he hadn't thought possible. His new assignment with the special team was challenging, but it gave him purpose, a direction that had been missing for so long. Each day, he was surrounded by people who understood what he had been through, people who respected him for his resilience, for the strength he had found within himself, and for the loyalty he shared with Rex. The team worked together on high-stakes missions, helping those in need, protecting the vulnerable, and ensuring justice was served. But the real reward, the one Ethan cherished the most, was the bond he had with Rex. The dog had become more than just a companion. He was a part of Ethan's soul, a silent partner in every mission, a constant presence that kept him grounded. Rex was there during the good days, the days when the team succeeded and celebrated, and he was there during the tough days, when the weight of their work felt too heavy to bear. No matter what, Rex remained Ethan's steadfast friend, offering his quiet support without ever asking for anything in return. One evening, after a particularly exhausting mission, Ethan and Rex found themselves alone in the quiet of the barracks. The lights had been dimmed, the sounds of laughter and chatter from the rest of the team faded into the background. Ethan sat on his bed, his legs stretched out in front of him, while Rex lay at his feet, his head resting on the floor, eyes half closed. For a moment, everything was still. Ethan looked down at the dog, feeling a sense of peace wash over him. The past, the storm, the dark woods, they all felt so distant now, like a lifetime ago. He had come so far, and it was Rex who had helped him get there. The dog had not only saved his life in the woods, but he had saved Ethan's soul, reminding him of what it meant to trust, to fight, and to live again. As the night stretched on, Ethan reflected on how far he had come since that stormy day in the woods. He had found his place in the world again. The team had become his second family, but Rex had become his true north. With the dog by his side, he knew he could face whatever came next. The future still held its uncertainties, but now, with Rex's unwavering loyalty and the support of his team, Ethan was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. It wasn't about surviving anymore, it was about living. And with Rex by his side, Ethan knew that he could do anything. Together, they had faced the storm. Together they had overcome the odds, and together, they would face the future, no matter what it held. Months had passed, and Ethan found himself settling into his new life. The work with the special team was demanding, but it had given him a sense of purpose that he hadn't realized he had been missing. Each day brought new challenges, and each night, Rex was there, a constant companion in the quiet barracks. The dog had become more than just a partner in their missions. He was a reminder of everything Ethan had fought for. Every step forward in their work, every success, was shared between them, a testament to the bond they had built in the woods that day. The team had grown to respect Ethan not only for his skills, but for the strength of character he displayed every day. He had seen things that most couldn't imagine, faced the worst, and come out stronger for it. But there were still moments, quiet moments, when the weight of it all seemed to catch up with him. It wasn't the missions that drained him, it was the memories of the past. Yet even in those moments, Rex was there. The dog seemed to sense when Ethan needed space, when he needed to think, and would sit quietly by his side, offering a silent presence that spoke louder than any words ever could. One evening, after a particularly exhausting mission, Ethan found himself sitting alone on the small porch of the barracks. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, leaving the sky a deep shade of purple. Rex was sitting beside him, his head resting on Ethan's knee, eyes watching the world as it settled into the stillness of night. Ethan's hand gently stroked the dog's fur, and for a moment, he allowed himself to relax. The pain, the exhaustion, it all seemed to fade away, replaced by a quiet peace. He looked out at the horizon, wondering what the future held. There were still so many things left to do, so many challenges ahead, but with Rex by his side, Ethan felt ready for whatever came next. He had found strength in his bond with the dog, a strength that transcended the physical. It was something deeper, something that couldn't be measured by any scale or chart. It was trust. It was loyalty. It was knowing that no matter how difficult the road ahead might be, he would never walk it alone. As the days continued to pass, Ethan and Rex grew even closer. There was an unspoken understanding between them, something that didn't need words. Rex had been with him through it all, from the darkest moments in the woods to the quiet moments in the barracks. And now, as Ethan sat there, he knew that no matter where life took them, they would face it together. Rex was more than a dog. He was a part of Ethan's life, a part of his journey, and a symbol of everything he had overcome. As the stars began to twinkle in the sky above, Ethan smiled down at Rex, grateful for everything the dog had done, for everything they had become. The future was uncertain, but as long as Rex was with him, Ethan knew he could face anything. As the weeks went by, the routine of base life had become second nature to Ethan. The work continued to be demanding, but he had found a rhythm. Each mission, each challenge, was met with confidence and resolve. But it wasn't just the work that had changed him. It was the quiet moments, the ones spent with Rex, that had given him the strength he needed. The dog had become his constant companion, his shadow, always there, always aware, always loyal. They had seen each other through the worst, and now, they were learning to find peace. One afternoon, as Ethan was walking through the training fields, he noticed a group of new recruits practicing their drills. They were focused, determined, but there was an edge of nervousness in their movements, a hesitation that came with inexperience. Ethan smiled softly to himself. He remembered what it was like to be new, to feel that pressure to prove yourself. Rex was walking beside him, ears alert, eyes scanning the field. Ethan patted the dog's head, grateful for his unwavering presence. He had been through so much, but with Rex at his side, He felt ready for anything. As they walked past the recruits, one of them noticed them and walked over, a hesitant smile on his face. "Hey, Sergeant Carter, right?" the young man asked. Ethan nodded, looking at the recruit with a mix of curiosity and amusement. "Yeah, that's me. I've heard the stories," the recruit continued, looking down at Rex. "About how you and your dog made it through the storm." Ethan smiled again, shaking his head slightly. "It wasn't just me. Rex was there the whole time." The recruit's eyes widened in admiration. "Rex, huh? You really owe your life to him, don't you?" Ethan met the recruit's gaze, his expression serious. "We owe each other. It's not about one saving the other. It's about being there for each other, no matter what." The recruit nodded, absorbing the words. "That's some bond you've got there." Ethan looked down at Rex, who was now sitting calmly beside him, looking up with those ever-watchful eyes. "Yeah," Ethan said quietly, "it really is." As they continued on their walk, Ethan thought about the recruit's words. It wasn't just about the dog. It wasn't about the missions, the training, or the successes. It was about the connections they had formed along the way. Rex had given him more than just loyalty. He had given him something even more valuable: trust. Trust in himself, trust in others, and trust that no matter what came next, he wasn't facing it alone. As the day faded into evening, and the last light of the sun disappeared behind the horizon, Ethan sat on the porch of the barracks, his feet resting on the steps. Rex lay beside him, his head resting on Ethan's knee. The quiet of the night was calming, the air cool and crisp. For the first time in a long time, Ethan felt at peace. He wasn't sure what the future held, but with Rex by his side, he knew he was ready. They had come so far, and together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. The future, whatever it may be, was theirs to face, and they would face it together. As the months continued to pass, Ethan and Rex had settled into a new chapter of their lives. Ethan's work with the special team had become more fulfilling, each mission giving him a sense of purpose. But it was the quieter moments, the ones spent walking alongside Rex, that truly grounded him. The bond between them had only deepened, a connection formed not just through survival, but through the understanding that they were stronger together. Rex had proven time and time again that loyalty went beyond actions. It was in the way they read each other without words. Ethan had come to realize that he wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was a man who had found healing, not just for his body, but for his soul. One afternoon, after a long day of training, Ethan and Rex were sitting outside the barracks, watching the sun dip low in the sky. The air was crisp, the quiet only broken by the occasional sound of footsteps as the rest of the team wrapped up their day. Rex was resting beside him, his head resting on Ethan's foot, the gentle rise and fall of his chest a steady reminder of the calm they had found. It wasn't always easy, and there were still hard days, but those days had become fewer and farther between. The feeling of dread that had once hung over Ethan like a shadow had dissipated. He was at peace. His thoughts often drifted to the future. What would it bring? Would it be more challenges, more obstacles to overcome? He didn't know. But what he did know was that he had a future where Rex was by his side. That was enough for him. As the light from the setting sun faded, Ethan stood up, stretching his sore muscles. He reached down and scratched Rex behind the ears. "You ready for a walk, boy?" he asked softly. Rex's tail wagged slightly, his ears perking up as he looked up at Ethan. Ethan chuckled softly. "I take that as a yes." The two of them walked out onto the path, the familiar grounds of the base now feeling like home. The trees were quiet, their branches swaying gently in the evening breeze. Rex walked alongside him, his pace steady, always in sync with Ethan's. There was something comforting in the way they moved together, side by side. It wasn't just about the work they did. It was about the life they had built together. Every step they took felt like a reaffirmation of their bond, an understanding that no matter where they were, they would always have each other. As they walked, Ethan couldn't help but reflect on how far he had come. The man he had been when he first arrived at the base seemed like someone else entirely. He had been broken, lost, unsure of his place in the world. But now, with Rex by his side, he knew exactly where he belonged. The journey had been long, but it had led him here, to this moment, to this life. And for the first time in a long time, Ethan felt a sense of certainty about the future. There would be more challenges, more missions, more obstacles to face. But he knew now that he could face them. Because as long as Rex was with him, he wasn't facing anything alone. Together, they had come through the storm. And together, they would face whatever came next. The days felt longer now, but not in a burdensome way. Ethan had found his pace, his purpose, and with each passing day, he grew more confident. The work with his team remained challenging, but it was rewarding in ways he had never expected. The missions were varied, but no matter what they faced, Ethan knew that Rex would always be right there by his side. The dog's unwavering loyalty had become a foundation for Ethan, a constant reminder of everything he had overcome and everything he still had to look forward to. Their bond had solidified into something deeper, something that went beyond simple companionship. It was a partnership. It was a friendship that transcended words, built on trust and mutual respect. One evening, after a long day, Ethan found himself sitting in the small courtyard behind the barracks, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The sky was painted with hues of orange, purple, and gold, and there was a quiet stillness in the air that seemed to match the peace Ethan felt in that moment. Rex lay next to him, his head resting on Ethan's leg, his eyes lazily following the movements of a few birds in the sky. It was in these quiet moments, when the world seemed to slow down, that Ethan felt most at home. He had come to realize that it wasn't the noise, the chaos, or the rush of everyday life that mattered. It was these small, simple moments, the ones spent with Rex, that truly made him feel alive. As the night grew darker, the stars began to twinkle overhead. Ethan leaned back against the stone wall, feeling the weight of the day finally lift from his shoulders. Rex lifted his head slightly, his ears perking up, as if sensing the change in Ethan's mood. The dog looked up at him, and Ethan smiled, reaching down to scratch behind his ears. "You're the best thing that's ever happened to me, you know that?" he said softly. Rex responded by nudging his hand, as if to say, "I know." Ethan chuckled at the gesture, feeling a warmth spread through him. He had never expected to find something so pure, so unwavering, in the midst of everything that had happened. The world was full of uncertainties, full of challenges, but with Rex by his side, Ethan knew he could face whatever came next. Together, they had made it through so much, and together, they would face whatever the future held. The team had given him a chance to prove himself again, and he had taken it. But it wasn't just about proving himself anymore. It was about living with purpose, with strength, and with the loyalty of a dog who had been by his side through it all. As the night settled into a peaceful quiet, Ethan leaned his head back and closed his eyes for a moment. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was living, and for the first time in a long time, he was content. The future, whatever it may hold, was something he was ready to face, because with Rex at his side, there was no challenge too great, no obstacle too daunting. Together, they had already overcome so much. And together, they would face whatever came next. It had been a year since Ethan's life had changed, since the storm, since the day Rex had found him and saved him from the depths of despair. Looking back, everything seemed like a blur. One moment he had been lost in the woods, unsure if he would survive, and the next, he had found himself surrounded by a new family, a new purpose, and an unbreakable bond with a dog who had become his greatest ally. Now, as he stood outside the base, watching the sunset one evening, it was hard to believe just how far he had come. Rex was by his side, of course, always by his side. The dog had become not just a companion, but a symbol of everything Ethan had overcome. With each mission, each success, and each challenge, Ethan knew that Rex was there, not just by his side, but in his heart. He looked down at the dog, who was watching the horizon with him, a calmness in his eyes. The world had once seemed like an insurmountable obstacle, a place where Ethan couldn't find his way. But now, with Rex, the world felt like a place full of possibilities. They had both found peace in their own ways, and the future, once a source of fear and uncertainty, now seemed like a path that could be walked with confidence. There was still work to be done, missions to complete, lives to protect. But Ethan no longer felt weighed down by the burden of his past. He had learned to carry it, to use it as fuel, to push forward with strength and purpose. And Rex had shown him that even in the darkest of times, there was light, there was hope. The team had become his second family, and he had earned their respect. But it was the bond with Rex that had transformed him the most. The trust, the loyalty, the understanding. It was something deeper than any bond Ethan had ever known. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows over the base, Ethan felt a sense of contentment settle over him. The future no longer seemed uncertain. It was something to look forward to, something to embrace. Rex stood up, sensing that Ethan's mood had shifted, and nudged him gently. Ethan laughed softly and reached down to scratch the dog's ears. "You ready to go, buddy?" he asked. Rex wagged his tail, his eyes bright with recognition. Ethan stood up, stretching his legs. Together, they walked toward the gates of the base, side by side, a partnership that was built on trust and mutual respect. Whatever came next, they would face it together. With Rex by his side, Ethan knew he could handle anything. The journey had been long, but it had brought him to this moment, a moment of peace, of hope, and of a future that was no longer defined by the past. And as they walked into the night, Ethan realized that the true strength wasn't in the battles he had fought. It was in the quiet moments, the ones shared with a dog who had never given up on him.